Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. There are two main ways one can perceive what is currently going on in the world. And those two main ways are based on judgment. First judgment says that many are enslaved because a few are tyrannical. The second judgment says the few are tyrannical because many are slaves. Whatever perspective you look at it from, whether you say that the reason why many are enslaved is because of the few tyrannical people, or that because you say that the few are tyrannical because many have a slave mindset. Point fingers at one side or the other. No matter what perspective one chooses to express their bias from. The reality of it in the age of technology in the 21st century is that consent is required for anyone to be enslaved. Now, it is the job of the tortfeasors to do their best to give you the impression that you don't have the ability to make a decision in any given circumstance. In some cases, they will even tell you that because their goal is based on something similar to a sales pitch, where they firmly believe, based on the culture of their working environment, and in some cases, their personal bias for the need for power because they were once bullied as a child and now they're working somewhere to replace that power that they felt deprived of as a child. So they'll tell you you don't have to consent for this to be right or wrong. They'll tell you your saying or your opinion means nothing. We'll do what we want anyway. As much as a tortfeasor does their best to give you a sales pitch that what you think does not matter, the reality is in order for a few to be tyrannical and for the most to be enslaved, they are actually codependent. They work with one another. For anyone to be tyrannical under any given circumstance, they require the consent of the one that's being enslaved. As much as one side might not want to agree with it, in fact, the tortfeasors, when it comes to those who really control things, they admit it openly. They don't care. They let you know, yes, we are in fact screwing you over based on your consent. The everyday man themselves are the ones who are delusional and thinking that their consent is being ignored or their words are being ignored, when in truth, they're the ones who wield the oil of slavery. Without them, the system of slavery would not exist. The everyday man is the one contributing to it because at the end of the day, those few who control it, they still require someone who looks like you, who speaks like you, to be in a position to enforce the fuckery. And the masses consenting to it are the ones given power to it. So regardless of whether one wants to say a few are controlling the masses because they're tyrannical, or that the masses are being enslaved by a few because they're slaves in their minds, regardless of whether one wants to look at it from one perspective or the other, consent is still required. Those two parties from the end of the polarity are codependent because those who are taking advantage of you need you to consent to it. No matter how much they try to convince you that your consent is not required, no matter how much the everyday man wants to pretend as though their consent doesn't matter or that they're being ignored, those two ends are codependent. They are constantly cooperating. So much that the principle is preserved in constitutions where they tell you in summary, the consent of the governed is required. Look at any preamble, look at any declaration of any state constitutions or any Bill of Rights. The first few Bill of Rights would always say so. At Maryland, the Constitution tells you in Declaration of Right that all government of right originates from the people. It's founded in compact only. Compact meaning it's not one-sided. It involves two perspectives to agree for a government to do what it does. And instituted solely for the good of the whole. And they have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their form of government in such manner as they may deem expedient. In other words, the everyday man, the people, are given consent to be governed because they're shareholders to the government. Albeit, that's not how it's ran in today's world because most everyday men don't even know the Constitution exists. And the ones that do don't even care much for its core values and principles. That's Maryland. This is North Carolina. North Carolina tells you, Section 2, sovereignty of the people. All political power is vested in and derived from the people. All government of right originates from the people. Meaning, in order for governments to have the power to govern anyone, they need to get the consent of the people. And they go on to say it's founded upon their will only, meaning what you do, what you think, is the core of how anyone can govern you, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. Meaning, a few does not govern the everyday man en masse, simply because they're tyrannical. Neither does the mass get governed by a few because the masses are slaves. No. There's a corporation going on. People who hold any of the polar extreme thought process are hypocritical because they don't want to start to observe self-responsibility, that in order for you to be taken advantage of, you have to play a role in that equation. At Illinois, it tells you to secure these rights and the protection of property, governments are instituted among men. Meaning, the organization of men exists prior to this thing called government as a body politic, formally created, formally recognized amongst someone who already exists, which is the everyday man and woman. And by virtue of that, the government deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. What they're telling you here is we're creating this foundational principles in black and white. No matter what happens, at the end of the day, know that your contribution is required for one thing to be right or wrong in your daily affairs. In 21st century, when it comes to technology, which a lot of people tend to somehow ignore or just omit, they don't realize that these things they call right are now heavily intertwined with technology. In previous videos, we spoke about things like MZ catchers, aka Stingray, the fact that certain warrants are not usually used before municipal local police can actually access everything you have in your phone, just based on your SIM card. We spoke about cell phone towers and how it constantly uses a mesh network to ping out information based on your phone's identification that is constantly prostituting itself. We spoke about Wi-Fi triangulation and how all those things work, whereby the accuracy is so much so up to 6 feet. You can calculate your geographical location, longitude and latitude. We spoke about the whole Apple AirTag and how it's being used to violate Fourth Amendment. And then there are many other issues when it comes to things like Google Voice, Alexa, all these things. People voluntarily use this technological means because to them it's a luxury. They have the new phone, they have this, they have that. They're sacrificing what they say they have or what they think or assume that they deserve. They're sacrificing it for comfort. No different than what occurred with the C-19. Now let's pause a little bit here before we start speaking about the C-19. I'm not here to hark and bark in support of anyone who says they don't want to do one thing or they say that one thing should occur. I don't care for any of that perspective. I'm looking at the foundational principle. The foundational principle is someone is sacrificing that which is rightfully the core of your existence for some assumed level of comfort. Don't do this, and we promise you that you'll be comfortably safe. Don't do this, and we promise you that things will be quicker and easier. All these people that are ordering things, getting delivered, do you know that your IP address is being saved into a dossier with these companies and that they're passing it on to local police departments? Because it's part of their company policy to protect their employees in case their employee go deliver these things. And if anything happens, well, they have to give it to the police department. And your IP address is always connected to your geographical location automatically. And your geographical location and that IP address is attached to a service provider who rents out a radio wave and then rents it back out to you as a Wi-Fi connection. And that service provider has a contract privately that you don't know about with the police department, whereby they render all your information to them. So now your privacy is as dead as it can ever get. So we're not looking at the mundane crap people look at when it comes to saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Let's look at the core of what people are sacrificing by the advent of these things that are slowly being creeped into people's lives. It's being done methodically. It's just an introduction. As mentioned in the past, is no different than lubricating your butthole before someone sticks their fist up there. There's something far bigger coming that's being planned that you have to be aware of. And all these things that occur in the past few years, it's just an exposition to a very big show. But you must be aware that something is wrong for you to be able to even begin to fix it. Most people are not even aware of it. They just take information that's fed to them. They consent to it without realizing that they're consenting to their own detriment. Hence, no one can rule you, no matter how few, without your consent to it, because that's the principle to how government works. And these tortfeasors actually align themselves with those principles by presenting trash in front of you, because they know the everyday man is incompetent. And thus the everyday man consent to be governed in a manner that violates the preserved rights within those Bill of Rights themselves. Technology is one of those beings. One can utter these things, but some people, until you show them examples of what's been going on, despite the fact that many explanation has been done on Patreon, granted, but on YouTube, here's one for you. Here's a perfect example of how that thing called the Fourth Amendment requirement for search and seizure. And even worse, people don't even know what Terry stop is. People don't know what the term reasonable means when it comes to reasonable articulation of a past, present, or current crime. People don't know the standard testing element. People don't know the difference between consensual encounter and community caretaking. These basics people don't know as to how to loophole to probable cause Fourth Amendment. People don't even know that probable cause is a standard of evidence that is far lower on the sliding scale of what evidence is. People don't know these things. That is not even considering those basic attributes, which on YouTube we've done videos and all that. So let's put all those to the side, regardless of whether you are aware of those basic principles or not. Let's show you something from an article when it comes to how technology is used to screw people's lives over. Remember, there's only a very few degrees of separation among humans. What you think is occurring to someone else somewhere else is in truth far closer to you than you think. Because in the age of technology, you are surrounded by technology everywhere. When you carry your phone, even if you use a Faraday bag and you put it in there, when you go out, that thing is constantly pinging out information. Mesh network, the way it works is basically that any given technological device can take information from your device and send it to any given database by ping-ponging that information until it gets to its destination. People don't know how this works. Part of the function of it is what we're about to read. In summary of what you're going to be listening to and watching in this video, know that it all goes down to one simple word: consent. Most people loosely and blindly consent to things without figuring out why it works or how it works. In past videos, it was previously loosely mentioned, not all VPNs are made equal, because there's something called a Copyright Digital Millennium Act, whereby anybody, especially municipal police, can go to all these VPN providers and basically do an isolated attack and say, during this day and time, we want to know who visited this certain website, and your VPN company will snitch on you. They will give all your information. You're not as private as you think. What you need to look into is the specific types of VPN companies that does not retain your information. Otherwise, you can use VPN all you want. It makes no damn difference if someone really wants to find out about you. And even if you use a VPN that does not keep your information, if you are really a target by the alphabet boys because of the level of technology they have, they will still find you. So there are certain things in a hierarchy that you can control, and certain things in another hierarchy that you cannot. And there are hierarchies and degrees of awareness of how the same thing people think they know about works. Regardless of all that, one thing is always common as a denominator. It is always consent. Man says Avondale police used Google data to wrongfully arrest him in 2018 killing. Taking someone's life, severing a soul from the body is not a lightweight matter. So if someone's now pointing a finger at you to say you did it, that's no easy thing. You're just an everyday man going by minding your business, doing the best that you can to tolerate stupid people at work so you can make enough money to give about 80 to 90% of it to someone else as a form of bill, because, well, you're still somehow studying how money works. Most people work for money, but they don't know how money works. They don't stop for a moment to think, maybe I should learn about how money works because I work ever so often about it. Maybe you're an exception. You're working for money, and on the side of all that, you learn how it works so that you can slowly free yourself. But then all of a sudden, someone puts a dent into the path of your life and says, so you did this to someone, regardless of whether it's as severe as the allegation of taking someone's soul or not. But you did this to someone. How do we know? Well, we don't have a warrant. We don't have an issue of reliability from a witness to say one thing or the other. But guess what? We have an artificial intelligence that says you did it though. Why? Because you don't really comprehend how technology works relating to your rights. And you don't even know that these things are being used against you every day. Just because it's yet to happen to you does not mean it's not going to proliferate it. It always begins very slow, very calm, very gentle, in a way whereby it's practically silent in the majority of people's lives. And then when the tortfeasor does it occasionally here and there, they realize, okay, we did it with 10 people in a year. Let's do it with 100 people. Oh, people don't know about it. Well, we'll just make it a norm. You have to be aware of it before it becomes a norm. Or even if it has become a norm, in which case it has, because technological luxury is everywhere. You have to be aware of how it relates to you and how it's being used and how it has affected others in the past. If you're not aware of something, you can never begin to question how you can fix it, let alone actually functionally work towards fixing it. Man says Avondale police used Google data to wrongfully arrest him in 2008 killing. Says he would have had George Luis Molina. Says he would have had to have been in two places at once to have shot and killed Joe Knight outside of his apartment complex in the early morning hours of March 14, 2018. He's alleging Avondale police used inaccurate Google data to arrest him on suspicion of murder, and now he's threatening to sue. All Avondale police investigators had was a blurry surveillance footage that showed someone in a white Honda follow Knight and then fire 9 shots from the driver's side window. The case similarly went cold. Then, in December 2018, Avondale police detectives arrested Molina in connection with Knight's murder. Here's Mr. George Luis Molina, casually going by his own way, trying to be a good old citizen, law-abiding, not bothering anybody, and all of a sudden someone just shows up and say, all right, you killed someone, snatch you up. At the time, they credited a new technique for helping them find the suspect. So now he's all of a sudden a suspect. A Google dragnet that identified any wireless communication devices that were logged into a Google account in the same geographical location of the white Honda on the night of the murder. So no different as to how even if you use a VPN, they can go to your VPN provider and say, during this time, during this day, we want all the dossier of everyone who used your service during this specific time around this specific area. In this case, it's not just VPN. It's based on a mesh network. In this article, they refer to it as Google Dragnet that uses wireless communication, meaning it uses low Bluetooth radio waves. You don't even need Wi-Fi. When people hear wireless, they probably assume Wi-Fi. In the age of technology, when you hear the term wireless, think of low frequency waves of Bluetooth, because those are sufficient enough to tap into your phone and get everything in it. Starting with your location, who you last spoke to, the text, the data, the metadata, the time, how long you spoke to them, how consistently you speak to them. Right. But alibi witnesses later confirmed Melina was more than 2 miles away at the time. So now AI is saying, hey, you were in the crime scene and you basically fit the corroboration of someone who did something quite bad to someone else. Because, well, the AI, say so. What is the reliability of that? Most don't know, yet it is being used against people. Under any circumstance where you see one article presented, that one article is an extremely minute portion of what's consistently happening to many people who have no means to contact any type of article agencies, whether it be the big ones or the small ones, to disclose what happened to them publicly. It might be someone homeless, it might be a single mother, it might be a nuclear family, whereby they're just hardworking, everyday, quote, middle class, which really doesn't exist. And some of them don't even know they can publish articles of their experiences. Everything just goes silent as though it never occurred. And guess what? The tortfeasors get comfortable. A notice of a claim, which serves as a precursor to a lawsuit, claims investigators ignored evidence that showed Melina was somewhere else entirely at the time of the murder. The 15-page notice of claim says Melina was falsely accused of the murder and was wrongfully imprisoned before the department publicly defamed him. He was released from jail a week after his arrest. His attorney, Heather Hamill, said his time in custody had lasting effect. The Fourth Amendment already violated, without even asking in any way. No probable cause affidavit, no reasonable suspicion of a crime, no indicia of reliability, but something that some pixel on some screen, some LCD screen says this guy was here, and we don't know whether he was the one who actually fired the shots, but it showed that it was here around the time, so obviously it must be him. And you know, most people in costumes are just children in big bodies looking for some action. They have some deeply rooted childhood issues that they just want to let out. They're itching for some action. Therefore, they see one thing, they don't care. They just go for it. We'll screw him over now. Hopefully he knows how to deal with it. And if he doesn't know, even better for us. Because they have this presumption of this thing called qualified immunity. And there's a way to actually strip that, so long as they're not abiding by the Constitution and you can prove so. But if you don't know the intricacies of how and why, how can you strip them of qualified immunity? Do you even know what special proceedings are? Do you even know how to garnish people's checks, bank accounts, things like that? Do you even know how to even start a regular suit in the first place? Most don't know this. They just talk a bunch of shit, a bunch of intellectual masturbation as to what they think the law is and what they think history is. Know these intricacies of how real life works. Because being taken advantage of is not all right. Consenting to being screwed by those who don't think twice before screwing you over. Consenting to it by way of your ignorance of how the world around you works is not all right. This entirely preventable ordeal, and by the way, this is a quote by someone, this entirely preventable ordeal has not only cost George his reputation, his mental health, and his career. This is his attorney, Heather Hamill, speaking. The claim said, but at a mere 22-year-old, it might have strangled any chance George had at a normal life. In other words, anyone's life can be casually destroyed by some gung-ho municipal employee who looks at some pixelated LCD screen and decides, good, we're going to go get this man or woman. Forget the Constitution. But this AI is telling this to us. Let's go abide by it. So long as we get the arrest, so long as it's tied to municipal bonds being issued, for them to buy it back, we get our commission, we get promoted and commended for it, we get happy, we feel like we have some power that we've been deprived from childhood. Good, we'll keep doing it. That's all they really care about. The notice says Molina will settle the claim for $1.5 million. Now, this is not some agreement. It's just saying this is what I'm willing to settle for, which is the notice of claim, which is the predecessor to a suit. A spokesperson for the city of Avondale confirmed they received the notice of claim, but was unable to comment due to pending litigation. The case against Molina. Meaning, all right, so this AI gave you this information that, well, this guy was here around this time when this occurred, without providing whether it was actually him, without really proving whether he was actually really there. The case against Molina. According to the notice of claim, the surveillance footage was one of the few leads Avondale police had in Knight's murder. Someone's life has been taken. It is important to find out about it. Detectives submitted a search warrant to Google in March 2018, requesting the identification of all Google accounts showing activity in the area where Knight was murdered. Meaning, the search warrant was not to an acting judge, according to the Constitution, to sign on it to say, we can now search this area. Remember, even Stingrays requires a search warrant because the technological device exists for them to basically search everyone's SIM card to look at their data and metadata. Just because that exists doesn't mean the requirement of search and seizure warrants can be retroactively ignored. And that's precisely what they're doing here. They are submitting a search warrant to an artificial intelligence rather than the foundational principles required by the Constitution. And they are acting on it. Avondale police initially said the return search warrant pointed investigators to the 4 devices that passed through the same geographical locations as the scene of the murder, meaning you can just casually go on by your way, pass by, and someone will put information in there to basically ping the mesh network from your phone in that given area. And now all of a sudden, you are now being corroborated to a supposition of a crime as a suspect of said crime. This is how technology is being used to fuck your life over unbeknownst to you. This is just what they're disclosing publicly. This is not even mentioning the fact that if you're in a public space, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. And there's something called a third-party doctrine, whereby now there's a tower somewhere within the municipality that if you could see its range, there's a circle within that entire city or town, whereby everyone's information is being pulled into a database through a mesh network. Do you now know that you need to use something called the Google phone? Do you now know that there's an importance in you to use certain things in a certain manner? Moving on. Avondale police initially said, meaning this was their first contention because, you know, they like changing things up. The return search warrant that was not to a judge in any given court, but to an AI, pointed investigators to 4 devices, meaning there were 4 potential suspects. And what about those 4 potential suspects? That passed through the same geographical location as the scene of the murder. And then 4 people casually passed by. And they had technological luxury, technological device on them. And as they passed by, all their information and identifying factor were absorbed and retrieved through mesh network. And it is saved in Google database that your local police department can now go back to say during this time, during this certain day, how many technological device was around here and who owns them, so that we can begin to do our investigation, even though we're not using the Constitution now, even though we're supposed to, but we're not. You have to be aware of these things that's going on in real life. You can read all the PDFs you want about speculation that people make and their own subjective conjectures. But the way real life works is far more harsh than that. And you have to be able to connect things based on syllogistical reasoning, including a device logged into one of Molina's accounts. The device tied to the account appeared to follow the same route the shooter's car took in the surveillance footage. Remember, it appeared, and they're not saying it's substantive or it's been proven. It just appeared. The same Google account also searched for, quote, shooting in Avondale on the night of the murder, police said. Again, whether it's true or false, it's just he said, she said. Molina lived about 2 miles from the crime scene and drove a white 2009 Honda Civic that matched the car in the surveillance video. So now they're already doing a search without a constitutional warrant, just by using AI. Arrested in Knight's murder. Molina was arrested at work, just an everyday man doing his best to hustle. Inflation fucking everything up. All that money he put in bank account basically worthless now because inflation is basically eating it up. But he's still at work though, running someone else's business for them, doing his best to somehow keep his health up, somehow manage to pretend that he's happy while working, while someone is basically planning to come snatch him up for something he knew nothing of. Molina was arrested at work on December 13, 2018. Remember, this guy called George Molina is a 22-year-old guy. So he's not your typical 22-year-old out there not doing anything good. He's not out there acting young and dumb. He's actually being productive, albeit somewhat arguable. But if that's the awareness that he has when it comes to work, then he's doing the best that he can to be productive. He's at work. Therefore, whatever AI told some police department, they came and arrested him at work. To hell with him and what he has going on in his life. Police said he confirmed he was the owner of the Honda Civic. And now, the mistake on his part was he was being interrogated. There's no search warrant, a constitutional one, yet he's consenting to opening his mouth and confessing and incriminating himself. Tortfeasor will give you a sales pitch that what they're doing is right. You have to reasonably question it by counterbalancing something called prevailing governmental interest, which is this for public safety? And most importantly, are you abiding by the Constitution? And 2, the preservation of your right. You have to counterbalance those things, meaning no one can casually come and start demanding anything of you, no matter what they say, until they prove their act is constitutional, until you can reasonably confer that their acts are constitutional. Most people don't even think about that. Police said he confirmed he was the owner of the Honda Civic. Now he's just self-confessing, without even realizing now he's consenting to something unconstitutional. So to those who say that the masses being enslaved because a few are tyrannical, or that a few are tyrannical because the mass are slave-minded, both of those perspectives are pathetically wrong. Because they both cooperate. The one being enslaved and the one enslaving, they're both partners. The consent of the governed is required. And this is one of the functional aspects of how the consent of the governed occurs. The consent of the governed occurs even when things are going wrong. Because the one being governed does not know the law surrounding how government is supposed to work. Police said he confirmed he was the owner of the Honda Civic, was the only one with access to his phone line, and didn't share his Google login information. So besides him not knowing the requirement of a constitutional warrant and the fact that he has a right to keep silent according to 5th Amendment and 9th and 10th Amendment, he does not know how technology works. He told police that his former stepfather, Marcus Cruz Gaeta, frequently took the car without his permission. The man had a criminal history, and Molina described him as a toxic person. So now he's getting quite personal, where it's not even needed. Things like this is what make tortfeasors comfortable, because they realize most people are suckers. The man had a criminal history, and Molina described him as a, quote, toxic person. So now you're taking your own personal little bias and view and whatever personal relationship you have with someone, and you're using it to incriminate yourself without you realizing you are the suspect. And they don't care about that other man, because at the end of the day, the AI did a mesh network that linked back to your device. All that other crap you're speaking about, some other old man taking your vehicle because, well, he's a toxic person, that's all your opinion. You're the suspect. Molina described him as a toxic person with a violent past. Gaeta was already wanted in connection with a murder in California. Molina's mother later told police Gaeta owned a gun and took it everywhere. Molina denied having anything to do with the murder, according to the notice of the claim. Now he's retroactively denying anything dealing with the murder. Yet, they've recorded and preserved a lot of things about you before they met you, after they met you by you running your damn mouth, which they will use against you. The key here is retroactively now saying you deny something weakens your power. You have to be aware of it from the get-go. Do it prudently. Be strategic with it. So now all they have is the he said, she said from the part of the tortfeasor. Now all he can now do is retroactively say, you know what, I deny all that actually. When in truth, he should have preserved it and denied it to begin with, based on the basic knowledge of how Constitution works, based in consent, and two, how technology is used against people, and how that mere technological luxury does not override foundational constitutional commandments. Simple as that. He couldn't explain why his car, cell phone, and GPS location were near the crime scene. If he comprehended how mesh network works, he would be able to. Molina was arrested on suspicion of premeditated first-degree murder. Now keep in mind, suspicion itself is not a crime. He was arrested on a suspicion of premeditated first-degree murder. This is without a constitutional warrant. Discharging a firearm within city limits without evidence of such. But based on his self-confession that, oh yeah, I did own that vehicle. But, well, let me now shift it to someone else who might have used it because, well, he's violent and he's a toxic person. To him, he thinks he's doing something. But the fact that he said that he did own an Honda Civic, he self-confessed and gave them the opportunity to say, oh yeah, so our corroboration using unconstitutional means is validated. We're right. Now they can invoke the fact that, well, since we're right and we eventually found out that it was really you, even though it's really not him, we can excuse the fact that we didn't have a constitutional warrant for search or arrest. Therefore, he was arrested on suspicion of premeditated first-degree murder because he did not know about Fifth Amendment. Shut him the fuck up.
Have you ever threatened any manager or boxer or promoter for not carrying out any wishes? I respectfully decline to answer the question on the ground I cannot be compelled to be a witness against myself.
Discharging a firearm within city limits, which he didn't do. Discharging a firearm at a resident, which he didn't do. Drive-by shooting, which he didn't do. So now they're just throwing the books at him. Marijuana possession and possession of drug paraphernalia. He was booked into the Maricopa County Jail and held in $500,000 bail, touting the new technology. The arrest was quickly touted as a success, meaning they just jumped into conclusion that yes, we did the right thing. A news release naming Molina as the murder suspect was sent out to local media. Now they're riding the full wave of it, starting from the fact that he didn't know that a constitutional Fourth Amendment warrant is required, and then he didn't realize how mesh network works, and he didn't realize that he had a Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate himself. But he thought he was doing something though. by trying to shift the burden, yet he admitted to the suspect vehicle, even though it wasn't even him. And based on that simplicity and those connection of link of information, they took advantage of him and went all the way with it so that they could get that medal, so that they could get that race, they could get that commission, they could get promoted, and they could add it to their books and tap into way more. A news release naming Molina as a murder suspect was sent out to local media, including the Arizona Republic, which is a local newspaper, which is a local media, which ran the story with the headline, quote, "Man arrested on suspicion of Avondale homicide through phone's GPS location." Not through a constitutional warrant, but just through his phone GPS location. And your phone is snitching on you. It's constantly releasing you where you are. And someone who is readily willing to take advantage of you will do so long as you don't know how substantive law works. Quote, over the next few weeks, masses of stories were published about Avondale PD's innovative use of Google data to solve crime. Meaning now they're commending them that good job using technology to catch all these bad people in society. The notice of claim said, quote, almost all the stories featured Mr. Molina's mugshot and incorrectly identified him as Avondale Police PD had incorrectly identified him as a murder suspect. His mugshot was plastered across local and national media. Now you're looking at false light claims of tort. Now you're looking at tort claims of defamation. By then, Hamill said, Hamill being his attorney, by then Hamill said, the case against Molina had already begun to fall apart. Quote, to them, this was never about catching the bad guy, unquote. Hamill said, quote, to them, this was about how we can bolster their public image. They just wanted to brag about the new use of technology. Two places at once. Two of Molina's friends reached out to Avondale police with information that proved he was with them at the time of the murder. He had attended a movie with the two friends on the night of March 13 before dropping one of the women off at her home, sometimes after 11:30 p.m. The notice of claim says they told police. Molina returned to his home with the other woman. They talked for a bit before she decided to head home and ordered a Uber. The Uber receipt allegedly provided to police shows the driver arrived at 12:08 p.m. She left Molina's house a minute later, around 2:11 a.m. Knight was murdered a minute later at 2:12 a.m., more than 2 miles away. The second woman confirmed the story, meaning now there's a true indicia of reliability based on those with first-hand experience relating to the one alleged to have performed some type of crime, in comparison to some vague artificial intelligence information provided, which at this point no one even knows whether it even existed or whether it was even accurately provided in the first place. Investigators also determined that Molina's Google account was used on multiple devices, including one of his old cell phone that Gaeta had access to. The problem with Google. The Google quote, dragnet, present challenges. Multiple devices can access one account associated with a single individual at the same time. In other words, say you have Google Play Store. It tells you before you can download an app, you need to log in with your Google Gmail. Right. But then you have another phone with the same Google Play Store. Just because you've logged into one device using that same Gmail does not mean you cannot log into the other phone with the same Gmail. That's what's going on here when they say multiple devices can access one account associated with a single individual at the same time. Putting aside Google Play Store, if you use your mail through your phone, well, they can get you that way too. If you're not using something like a K9 mail, which takes all the information from any given type of domain name from Gmail, Yahoo Mail, whatever, AOL, and then brings it into the K9 for the purpose of privacy so that this will not occur. But you're directly going to Gmail or you've downloaded the Gmail app, you're screwed. The data shows the physical location of the device accessing the account, not the location of the account holder. So now you see that anyone can just take your information based on mesh network and just say, you might not be in the location, but we know that you logged in and you're within a 2-mile range. So we just say you did it. Makes it easier for us. You don't know any better about substantive law, and you definitely don't know any better about technology. So we can take advantage of you, and you will consent to it. That's what's going on here. The data shows the physical location of the device accessing the account, not the location of the actual account holder. Remember, he said the other guy called Gaeta had access to his Google account also. At one point, the notice of claim says investigators noted Molina's account was being used at his mother's place of work. At the same time, bank records showed someone was using his debit card to purchase beer at Walmart. In other words, quote, Google location data merely shows a possible physical location of a Google account holder, information that may or may not be accurate, the notice explains. Any information provided by Google is intended to be independently corroborated by law enforcement, which they didn't do. They just came to an arbitrary conclusion, and guess what? When they came to him to say, we're snatching you up, you did this, because, well, this AI told us. Guess what he started doing? He started running his mouth. Yeah, I own that vehicle, but, well, some other guy carries that vehicle around and, he uses my Google account, blah, blah, blah. You just waived your Fifth Amendment right. So can you really blame the ones acting tyrannical? In 21st century, you cannot escape competence. A crime he did not commit. An Avondale police detective sent a text to the deputy attorney, meaning the people that will be prosecuting him on behalf of the state of so-and-so, right? Because every time they sue you, they're purporting to be doing it on behalf of the people of the state. Therefore, the prosecuting attorney sues in the name of the people in the state of so-and-so. So they're taking the power of the people of the state of so-and-so and whacking you with it. Because the preamble of the Constitution is based for the people of so-and-so. So now they're taking constitutional powers and kicking your ass with it, despite its origin being unconstitutional. But if you don't know it, they will get away with it, and you will consent to it by ignorance. Granted, there are things such as accrual, the discovery rule, and equitable tolling. But most people don't even know those things either. A crime he did not commit. An Avondale police detective sent a text to the deputy attorney from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office assigned to the case on December 4, 2018, the day after Molina's arrest. He told the attorney, the cops told the prosecuting attorney, that multiple witnesses had confirmed Molina's alibi, meaning there's a proper corroboration based on an issue of reliability, meaning something that indicates that an evidence is reliable that something occurred or did not occur. In this case, the police was telling the prosecuting attorney, who is whacking Molina with the power of the state of so-and-so, the Constitution, that look, even though I'm giving you this thing to sue this guy, there are those who say that he actually didn't do it. Now, whether or not this AI is accurate or not, well, we don't know, but there are actually people with first-hand knowledge and experience, 2 of them, that said this guy didn't do it. And that is what his notice of claim says. He allegedly disclosed that it was, quote, highly unlikely Molina was the murderer. So they know better. He then followed up, quote, I'd recommend having George released. The information we are getting now is leading us more towards George's mom's boyfriend, Marcos. The press release touted Molina's arrest was distributed on December 17th. Molina was released from jail on December 19th, almost a week after he was arrested, and 5 days after the detective sent the text. Gaeta was arrested in March in Riverdale, California, on an Arizona warrant. So now they had to get a fugitive warrant to actually get the proper party. He was charged with a 2016 murder in Indio, California, another incident which delayed his extradition back to Arizona. The thing about extradition is, in order for the one taking you out of that state to do so, you have to settle any given pending claim in that state before they can take you out of the state. Hamill said Molina has yet to receive a formal letter from the Maricopa County Attorney's Office acknowledging he will not be charged. And then now they're just keeping silent about it because they know they acted unconstitutional. And they all can be held liable for it. He also lost his job. That's damages right there. It's future damage, that's irreparable damage, and that's compensatory damage based on what he would have actually made had all this unconstitutionality not occurred. And was dropped from his college program, even way more damage. He doesn't want to leave his home for fear his phone will track him to another crime scene. Well, if he knows how technology works, he wouldn't have to worry about this. So now you have a technological luxury that's now your handler that we mentioned in this video. And now your freedom to just be yourself and handle your daily affairs is hindered because you're afraid that the same thing that you carry around as a technological luxury, which you probably spent thousands on and you still pay the phone bill, that same thing that's enslaving you monetarily is now enslaving you physically. Now you can't be free. Quote, the event of December 13, 2018 have permanently changed the course of Mr. Molina's life. The claim says, quote, his mugshot is all over the internet, and Avondale PD to this day continues to accuse him of murder. He is struggling financially and can't leave his home without being recognized. Thus, at a mere 24 years old, at the start of his career, he is finding that his entire life is being defined and limited by a crime he didn't commit. When I say people's lives are being destroyed by tortfeasors due to people's own incompetence, this is just one example. So now you see you have no choice but to be competent, because everything in every corner will be used against you with impunity if you don't know what is rightfully yours. Most municipal police employees perceive rights as a sales speech. They deep down believe that you don't deserve what you're saying that you want. Therefore, they can convince you, like a general manager and a dealer will convince you that you don't deserve to get any discount price or to remove anything from that sales box because you don't believe that you deserve it. Therefore, you're not getting any type of lower price. You're asking for it, but you don't believe you deserve it. That's how local municipal police employees perceive rights. And they think they will get away with it because you don't know anything about what's going on. And this man actually has an attorney, yet the attorney is bitching and crying on his behalf, when the attorney is supposed to be going at them. In fact, the attorney is just basically saying, we're not doing anything, but this guy is a victim, when in truth, he's supposed to be going after them. So now you realize, while it's good to have attorneys on standby, you should know what your rights are, because ultimately that officer of the court, that shield for the interest of Great Britain, called an esquire, aka an attorney, whether on the state or federal level, is there to corroborate and work hand in hand with those same extension of colonies called municipalities, called state of. And you, on the other hand, are the ones that's fucked in the ass at the end of the day. You have no choice but to know you're right. Until next time, take care. Best of luck.
I have a Patreon page, and I'm inviting you to come join. For you interested in discharge, we show everything about how it's done and my own experience. Consistent posts are made explaining many things regarding said discharge. Many will seek and simply wouldn't find. Those dealing with mortgage issue or want to know more about it, we speak of it. For those dealing with basic stuff like traffic issues, we speak about the solution, and I show it from my own experiences and how I permanently prevent any such issues. Those worrying about trust, different types of trust, we go over so many things consistently. Regarding trust, we show the IRS manuals. Those who are interested in suing and making money through debt collection or other means, we go over it, we show it. I show my own settlement checks and the things that I've done as a personal experience. Those interested in banking, We show subtle details and intricacies of the things that I have learned for those interested in other things like the IRS forms and how to put it to use. We show it, explain the details. For those interested in court-related matters and intricacies, we always show it. For those interested in the spiritual aspect of things and how it works, we show and explain it. Those with child support matters, we explain and we show everything in detail also. Great puzzle pieces that can never be found in other social media platforms, but we explain it all as it relates to many different things. For those interested in express trusts and the issue of how not qualifying for taxation, which I call dinking, how it relates to any other type of trust or any other affairs, and how you can intertwine your affairs into the different types of discharge that exist and lack of qualification for taxation. Speak about it. The truth about really recusing attorneys and the whole foreign agent registration and attorney lawyer number, we speak about it. Speak about how to really bring about juries, and some of the comment section asks good questions and greater answers are given. Speak about how to get and use tax exemptions for vehicle use and sales. You don't have to belong to some organization. You can actually get yours according to the language of the legislature within your state. Go over the details that a lot of people mentor about regarding Article 1, Article 3. What really makes a court? It's not limited to just your paperwork. Most people don't know. We go over business matters for those with actual businesses, S Corp, C Corp, LLCs, those who are business minded and those who make money. Go over other things that a lot of people don't know functions internationally. We speak about a lot of other spiritual related matters. Details on how to bring criminal charges, what it truly means to bring criminal charges, what a bill of particulars is, how to recuse a judge, details of the parliamentary rules in court and legislature, different things about standard of evidence and burden of proof, different things that a lot of people will speak of. Discovery. But did you know there are 6 types of discoveries? You know how to intertwine your LLCs and S Corps with an express trust, how to not make them taxable. Do you know when Trinity versus Pagliaro really is involved? Do you know how to use your home as a home office? And the many details involved. Go over the injunction and how to enforce the different types of injunctions that exist. The intricacies of how data brokers exist and how they steal information. Not just the credit bureaus, but many data brokers and how you can prevent them. We go over grants, getting grants. We go over issues and solutions of CPN and how they're created. There are about 6 or 4 to 5 different parts that were created. We go over caveats where people say sue them, but they don't really know. We go over the things to do after you sue them. We go over the issues of privacy and technology. All the whole thing about perfection of security interest, UCC, and how to use it and how to monetize the birth certificate, all that. We go over the details. There are a lot of principles and doctrines people don't know about that we go over. Go over how to really do the copyright and details involved in it. Go over how to simply do a trademark. It's far more easier than you think. All these people telling you go to a trademark office, do this, write this letter. It's not that difficult. Go over how to fill out the GSA bond box at a time, and so many more. How to get settlement checks, how to put your vehicle in a trust. I show you from my own experiences, form for form, step by step. Go over the different types of relief to be granted. The type of relief you seek invokes the type of jurisdiction that you fall under. All these people speaking about chancery, equity, at law, common law. The relief that you seek is directly tied to the type of jurisdiction. Go over the CPN, how it's created. Go over how to obtain bonds, where to do it. Go over the different types of discharge and some more. We explain each of those types of discharge. We explain how trademark and copyright is affiliated with asset protection. We go over how to prove trust. We go over the different types of fraud. We go over the importance that many people will never know. So many more. I show my own experiences in the audio calls from court cases of how I get different types of settlement checks. Go over the different types of discharge. There's so much more that it can't even completely be spoken of here regarding trust. We go over how to create it step by step, and many more things that will never be shown on YouTube or any other platforms. Go over other principles that people don't know about. And they speak about statute of limitation. Well, fraud does have a statute of limitation, but do you know how to subvert it? As to why that phrase fraud has no statute of limitation to bring it to life, most people don't know. There's so many things that we speak about. We speak about how to garnish people's checks and people's property. There's a form that you use for that. People don't know about it. Speak about details regarding foreign trustees. Speak about spiritual related matters. And on the Instagram page, if you get to join, come on over. There's also a Facebook page where questions and answers are posted and other reminder links to certain videos are shown. Till next time, take care. Best of luck.
Thank you.